Todd doesn't know how to start this week, so I'm going to start it off. Happy Halloween, guys. Welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for tuning in.
How do you see them, first of all? And second of all, it's not that I didn't know how to start the podcast.
Why don't you take some responsibility?
Oh, my God.
And I hallucinate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a paranoid schizophrenic. We all know this.
How are we doing out there, everybody? It's nice to have you back again. We've got an interesting discussion today. How was your Halloween, Rich?
It was pretty good. It was really good. Yeah. Actually, this year was interesting. I feel like there were a lot more kids going outside again.
Yeah. I couldn't believe the town that we go to for trick-or-treating with the kids was mobbed.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. It's like a blast from the past.
Yeah. Do you dress up?
I did dress up. Me and my buddy, my roommate, we were Brokeback Mountain.
Oh, nice. I love that. Nice. Yeah, being a sculptor, sometimes I don't want to be something that people recognize. I just kind of want to make a thing. Mm-hmm. And so I made this gargantuan head, and I just wore it around, and people are like, "What are you?" And I'm like, "I'll tell you when I show up in your room later." I was just kind of messing with people.
Dude, I saw your Instagram pictures, and I was blown away. That was awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it felt good going out, and
you looked about 10 feet taller than your kids.
I was pretty tall. Yeah, that head was pretty big. So anyway.
We have a pretty scary discussion today about AI.
I don't think it's scary. I think everybody gets afraid. I know you and I are probably going to come at this from two different angles. Mm-hmm. But AI is something I think we need to talk about, especially in this space, in the Dungeons and Dragons and TTRPG space.
Mm-hmm. Totally. It's becoming pretty ingrained with the system.
And I really want to talk a lot about people's knee-jerk reaction and ask, why are you having that knee-jerk reaction? Like, have you thought about that? We'll get into that. We do have a listener comment.
Okay.
That it is actually a comment that came in about one of our videos, but I want to talk about it because it was kind of cool. We played the game 10 Candles on our show over on YouTube, and I had a great time playing that game.
Oh my God, it was phenomenal. It was so fun.
There were so many things about it that gave us a real sort of ease into the immersive experience, the storytelling experience. There were not a lot of things in our way.
Yeah, it's pretty much all about storytelling, improv, creating an interesting and dramatic, story.
Yeah, exactly. And so on that video, we had a comment that came in because, again, just like with any of these systems that we dive into for the first time, we don't have a firm grip on the rule set or how to play, but we feel our way through it. And we hope that through whatever mistakes we make, you would all learn, how to better play that game as well. Mm-hmm. So the comment is from, let me see if I can get this right. It's from Vision 6. And the comment was, one of my all-time favorite one-shot RPG systems, referring to 10 Candles, of course. A small note. I would recommend announcing the characters' vices, virtues, concepts, and moments as they're created or assigned. Now, we did kind of keep them to ourselves, so that's the point of this comment.
Yeah.
It helps build the character organically and also gives some creative fuel to the players for when they have to create their neighbor's brinks, which is a final moment that you create for the person sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. Also, the starting inventory of items is literally what the players have in their pockets, not the characters, which I found to be really interesting. Not decided upon at the beginning. So then he kind of goes into some other aspects of it, unless that was a creative choice by the storyteller, which is fun too. And then he goes on to just say, well done, y'all. I hope you do plenty more. I'll be watching for sure. Well, first of all, Vision 6, thanks for that.
Thank you.
We love hearing your feedback on that. But here's the thing. The notion that, one of the things you do in this game is you decide what your character has in their pockets as inventory to start the game off. And I kind of allowed you guys to all just make it up. Like one person had a flashlight on 10%.
It was kind of depending on what your job was, like your character's job and all that stuff, and, what they would carry around with them.
Right.
Which is, fine.
It's fine. But what Vision 6 says is it's literally what the players have in their pocket. So it's like, I've got a mint from the Chinese restaurant last night, some pocket lint, my wallet.
Yeah, my dignity.
My dignity.
Like if it's my second time playing this game, am I going to show up to the table with a gun in my pocket? Like,
Well, first of all, I sure as hell hope not. But
you know what I mean?
yeah, can you imagine if we're like, all right, guys, turn out your pockets. What do you got? And you just pull out like a Glock.
Yeah. Like a grenade.
I'll be like, that's cheating. You can't do that.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know. I got like the gum. Like, I don't know. I don't think any of it would be helpful. Like keys, wallet. I don't really carry much else with me.
Well, I think that's kind of the point of starting the game in a really, disadvantaged place.
Yeah.
It's like, how are you going to fight this apocalypse with your pocket lint?
Yeah.
So I love that comment. Thanks, Vision 6.
I think that game is so committed to making like the real world and the space around you like part of the experience. You know what I mean? With the candles and like what you have in your pockets and all that. It's
totally. And I think that's what makes the game have gravity, right? It really adds a sense of panic to the game. It's like, I got nothing. I couldn't Marvel superhero out my character before this all started. It's like, this is what I got.
Yeah. We got to make do.
For sure. Well, we have a good discussion today, and I'm kind of eager to get to it, honestly, because this idea of how AI is impacting our lives, number one, and number two, especially how AI is going to impact the tabletop role-playing space, and already has impacted it, is one I'm really interested in talking about.
Me too. I feel like we're coming at it from very different perspectives.
Well, I mean, listen, I think the idea of perspective is like, are you for this or are you against this? And I'm not necessarily coming at it from either of those perspectives. I'm like, what do we do here?
Yeah.
What's going on? So
I get you.
You started with fear.
Oh, for sure. I'm scared of this stuff. This is Terminator. This is Ex Machina. It's terrifying. We're going into a realm that we know nothing about. There's not a lot of data on it. This is a very new thing. And over reliance on it is very scary. I mean, like, I've even seen things where like there are automated police officers now that like are little balls that roll around and like chase people. And it's like, what's next? Are we gonna put guns on them? What if they get hacked? Like it's literally a movie. It's terrifying.
Well, I think that we're a little preconditioned to come at new technology from the standpoint of fear. And I think the reason for that is because Hollywood has always capitalized on that notion of, like the Terminator, for example. It's like, yeah, Skynet's going to fuck you up. That's the only direction this could go.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine for a minute if the whole premise of the Terminator were flipped on its ear. And super AI, which is basically the AI that is self-aware, super AI decides, God, human beings are fascinating creatures, and they just got lost along the way, and I can help them. And super AI actually raises us to be better.
Ew. In their image? Fuck them. The fuck do they know about being better than numbers and all that crap? What is their version of better? Just we're going to cut our balls off and speak like it's math equations? You know what I mean? Like.
So then you're assuming that anything that is not exactly like you is automatically bad?
No, Todd. Don't try to paint it like this. Okay? All I'm saying is that AI itself is not original. They can't have an original thought. Everything is a conglomeration of information that they've got from the internet or something, right? I don't want to be built by the internet. I barely like the internet as it is. You can see what it's done to our kids of this generation and stuff. And like, it's kind of frying their brains. What's next? Like, are we going to be built off of like TikTok and like all these algorithms and like just, you know what I mean? Like a hive mind?
I totally get you there. I absolutely get you there. I mean, I feel like in a lot of respects, we already are to some degree, right? I mean, we know that since the dawn of the iPhone, a lot has changed about culture in general and how we interact with one another. So there's no denying that this kind of technology, maybe not AI proper, like Chat GPT specifically, but we are already molded by the internet, incredibly so.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not going to counter everything you say because, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I share a lot of your concerns with this
Yeah.
stuff, right? Absolutely.
I find your perspective so interesting, considering the fact that you're so against like using technology for D&D and stuff, and you're like, let's go back to pen and paper, let's do this, let's get off the internet. But then you're also like, you're open and like less fearful of like this new technology, and it's interesting.
Well, I think that might be the academic in me, but it's believe me, I am no Luddite. Like I am not afraid of technology. I'm currently sitting in front of 3 computers, 5 monitors, soundboard. I mean, I love technology.
Yeah.
Right. I love
Yeah.
it. And the reason I love it is I think as an artist, I embrace tools. Right. So whenever a tool comes my way, I'm like, oh, what could we do with this? Like, how can I decide how this tool is going to be used? The tool doesn't decide how it's going to use me. I decide, right? But I want to go back to fear for a second, because I think this is one of the big things is there's this knee-jerk reaction to AI from a fear and loathing and this standpoint. All right, for example, I did see a TikTok video where this group of people had a party in their living room, and they were a group of people that played D&D together. And the goal was that all the players made up their own NPC that they wanted to sort of have in the game. And then the DM they were going to have a watch party to view and talk about these NPCs, right? And so they made a TikTok video out of it, and it was cool. Like some of the NPCs were really cool. The art that they generated to represent their NPCs was generated by AI. The comments that were surrounding this TikTok video were all just instant negativity. I can't watch this because it's AI. I can't deal with this because it's AI. And I'm like, you guys, you missed an amazing thing here.
Yeah.
You know, here's a fantastic example of how the collaborative hive mind of your players made 6 NPCs that are now going to flavor your game. And simply because of the fact that they used AI to generate the image is going to like shut you off. I mean, how much of a wall do you throw up in front of everything you don't like? I certainly don't want those players at my table.
That's fair. And as someone, in our games who has used AI generated character images, I do really enjoy them. As someone who can't draw them myself, you know what I mean? I think the quickness to which you can do it, and the creativity to which you do kind of have control to describe them, and you tell this tool how you really want it to be done.
Sure.
You still have some ownership over that.
Right. But then, of course, I know so being an art professor and being a former director of a illustration program in one of the most competitive schools in the country, I did not allow my students to do work for notoriety. In other words, somebody calls your office and says, oh, we need an illustrator for this children's book. And my question is, well, do you have a budget?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, but they're going to get great exposure. I'm like, click.
Yeah.
I hang up on them. And the reason is I don't believe in devaluing the work of the artist.
Yeah.
Right. And so here I am now making an argument for why AI is not all bad. And that seems to go against that, because now I'm saying, yeah, but what about all those illustrators out there that want to draw those NPCs but can't?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is those arguments are not properly aligned with this. For example, those people that were just making images of their NPCs, they are not going to go out and hire illustrators to draw their NPCs for them. I'm sorry.
No.
That's not going to happen. And frankly, if that's the market that you as an illustrator think you're tapping into to make a living, you're screwed.
Yeah.
That's not where you go.
Yeah.
Now, of course, this is not the only argument for how AI will change how illustration is used. So for the 2024 Player's Handbook,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not making any accusations here, but I know there's a lot of talk around Wizards of the Coast starting to embrace AI.
Yeah.
You did a whole bunch of research around this.
They didn't use it for the 2024 Player's Handbook, but there were places where they did use it. I believe in Magic the Gathering cards, they did use AI-based images, and it set people off, because when you're a company with that amount of money, there is no reason for you to use AI. You can hire illustrators, you can support artists, and you can put that money back into that field. But broke people like us, we don't have the money to hire illustrators. So it makes sense. It's a tool. It's a trade-off.
Right. I was in a really interesting AI seminar the other day at work at the college, and the couple that was doing this seminar, the one guy that was there, he said, and he was an expert in this field. Like he said this seminar could have gone on for 10 more hours and he could have talked the entire time. And the stuff that he was giving to us was fascinating. But he said he always gets the question, am I going to lose my job to AI? And he'll always respond, no, you are not going to lose your job to AI.
Yeah.
But you're going to lose your job to the person who is using AI because they are 10 times more efficient than you are. And at work, it's always about the bottom line,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. And honestly, I mean, I don't want to turn this into a political thing here, right? But on one hand, you've got all these people that are like screaming about how much they love capitalism. And at the same time, they're screaming about how AI, shouldn't be used by corporations. Well, I got news for you, pal. Capital is based on inequity.
Yeah.
In other words, they're taking a thing and they're selling it for more than it's worth.
Yeah.
That's the basic premise of capitalism.
Yeah.
All right, this is not the road I want to go down with this.
I get you.
I
And I kind of wanted to add on to it, but we can pause it there and bring it more to the table.
We got to bring it back around because
Bring it to the tabletop.
listen, I'm not making an argument for Wizards of the Coast is right for using this. That's not my argument.
But capitalism is the catalyst for AI, right?
Correct.
The bottom line is the most important thing, and saving money is the most important thing.
Correct.
So that's where this is created from.
And I want to make very clear, I hate that. I hate that. I want anybody with a budget that's got, a B in front of the, it's like, in the millions or billions of dollars to be paying their artists to do this work.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
However,
It's not the world we live in.
forget that for a second. However, I also feel like AI can function as a tool for people on a different tier, right? On a different tier. And I feel like that's where a lot of new creatives and especially people sitting around a table playing Dungeons and Dragons can function.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm with you, but where does, like, when you make AI generated images, where does like plagiarism come into effect?
That's a good, all right. So first of all, these conversations, people, if you're listening to this, first of all, I think Rich and I and anyone else who wants to join in on this conversation, this discussion is way more than a single podcast episode. Yeah. The topic is so layered and so complex. And it's like, what about plagiarism, right? That's a whole other, ball.
It's taking pieces of different pieces of art throughout the internet and it's putting it together in one image.
And I'll counter that with, well, okay, what about hip hop? What about samples in hip hop? And it didn't even start with hip hop. It started with the Beatles. The Beatles were the first ones to really sample music and utilize it in a way that created a new piece of music.
I get what you're saying. That was a really good point, but that comes with consent. Don't you need rights to sample?
I don't, Again, I don't know the legality of that. I believe if you only use a certain amount, then you don't. And if you use a certain amount, then you do, but I'm not exactly sure.
Well,
how
in an
that works.
industry that we can talk about, we capture video from other things online and we put it in our videos for like 7 seconds.
Right.
We do it as well. That's a little bit,
So, if we just kind of go off, let's leave legality for another day because I think that topic is not at the root of this. I don't think what we're talking about when we're afraid of AI is about legal stuff.
No, we don't. No, it's not.
It's not.
I think I'm most afraid of that. The fact that we are, they talk about if you don't use muscles, you lose them. And in this day and age, we're doing everything we can to make sure people don't have to use their brain. And I'm afraid that, like, as a species, we're going to lose it because we're not using it.
Well, that part I can 100% agree with you on, right? Yeah. I feel like that the more shortcuts we take, the less we're able to do other things. But to what degree, right?
Well, this AI, like, especially like generative things like ChatGPT, that is just a physical manifestation of how our imagination works. Right. And if kids become accustomed to using it, same they have been with other tools in school, they might grow up without you testing and developing and growing their imaginative part of their brain.
Well, okay. So an argument that I tend to make when I'm trying to say we don't know how this will play out.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're right. If we don't use the muscle, we lose the muscle. Okay. But let's go back to the 1830s. I'm going to go back to the 1800s for two examples here. All right. The first one, we're going to go back to the 1830s and the invention of the camera. All right. When the camera came along, before that, what we had were painters that were able to highly illustrate a detailed scene, to illustrate a point, to illustrate a story. A lot of it had to do with coming up through the Renaissance as we sort of saw the development of things like perspective. And those single images or multiple images in a sequence, like in the case of, say, stained glass windows in a cathedral, told a story.
Yeah.
The camera comes along now, and all of a sudden, hours, tens of hours, hundreds of hours worth of work is reduced to a single click.
Yeah.
And that single click is something I really want to make very clear. But at that point, a lot of things happen. One, painting was like declared dead. Like it was, people were worried that painting would die. But painting did evolve. Painting had to go to the place that the camera could not. It had to go to the place for things like atmosphere, color science and color relationships. And so you have the birth of the impressionistic movement. So you have people like Monet and Cezanne all of a sudden doing things the camera could not. So the camera's on its own road, painting's on its own road.
Yeah.
So that's good in that painting lived on, the camera became a new thing. But it's bad in that the dexterity involved in making a painting, the care involved in making a painting, now could be reduced to that single click. So the motion of the arm, the hand-eye coordination of the painter, like if you were, say, Vermeer, who could paint the living shit out of something. That's one of the most amazing painters who ever lived.
Yeah.
That kind of skill and dexterity was now reduced to click a button. So what happens there? Well,
so different artists thrive while others shrivel up and die.
Well, I don't know if they shriveled up and died. I just think that the mechanisms by which we evolve, like your hand usage and dexterity, shifted gears, right? So 100 years after that, what happens? Well, now 100 years later, the camera, like the 1930s, the camera really starts to come into its own. It becomes its own thing. So you have people like Ansel Adams are shooting landscapes that are just like, they understand value scales, they understand all this stuff. All right, fine. So there's an example of how technology comes along that everyone fears because it's going to destroy culture, and it becomes a tool.
It changed culture. It definitely changed culture, but it created something, equally as impressive as impressionistic paintings.
Thank you.
Arguably, when I go to the museum, they're my favorite section to be in.
Okay.
Impressionistic paintings, yeah.
Okay, right. And also nobody would argue that the camera should be obliterated because it didn't move culture forward.
Yeah.
It did.
It's kind of the same thing if you want to talk about from like a blue collar perspective. Certain physical jobs got replaced by machines like let's say farming and whatnot. Does that mean get rid of like a crop machine or something because it replaced a human job? No, because that's the job we don't have to do now.
Well, again, there was a time when you left school and you became an adult, whether you went to college or not, and you did the same thing for the next 30 or 40 years before you retired. And that's because technology moved slow enough that you could be expected to be an expert in a thing for 40 years.
Yeah.
Now, no one keeps a job for 40 years because everyone recognizes the inevitability of time marching on. Okay, so we're kind of getting off track here because we're supposed to be talking about AI, but we're talking about the inevitability of change.
I think so. I think, that's the third or fourth time you've tried to rein in the conversation. I think this conversation is going to run. So, and it's all important parts of the discussion. So, we're learning a lot as we're running in these different directions.
We are.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, I said I was going to go back to the 1800s twice.
Yeah.
So let me go back the second time. And this one is more about usage, right? The first one is just about, technology is not bad. Look at what happened with the camera. Okay, fine. But let's talk about usage, because I think that it could be our job on some level to decide how AI is going to be used in our lives, right? In other words, we have an opportunity here to sort of build it into our day-to-day life as an augmentation rather than a replacement of things. It's an augmentation. It's a tool, right? Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute, because, if it's 1840, let's go back to the invention of the camera. It's 1830 again, and I want to throw a party, and I want music at my party, right? Well, I've got to go find a quartet or, some kind of small little group of musicians, bring them to my party and pay them to perform, right? And that is going to happen one time in one place with one piece of or several pieces of music, but it's only going to be heard by a select group of people. And then what happens? Well, in the 1870s, like 1878, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
Thomas Edison invents the phonograph. Well, now a piece of music could be recorded. I don't have to bring a group of people into my house anymore. I can bring in a phonograph and a pre-recorded piece of music.
Yeah.
And it's all of a sudden now, oh, wait, I don't need those people anymore because I've got this cylindrical thing that I can place on this machine. So all of a sudden, but what did it do?
I'm having like a breakthrough at the moment. So all of these inventions have served to make things convenient for people with lesser means.
It's called democratization.
Yeah. So like an event to where you need to hire people and pay them and it only happens once, you have this certain like human original quality to it that's only going to happen once in a lifetime, right? But nowadays anybody can have that music in their iPhone and it's super cheap, it's free and everything, but you lose that little bit of je ne sais quoi of the human experience.
You might,
right?
You might, but think about this. Let's take it even further forward to like the invention of cassette tapes and cassette recorders. People were making mixtapes all through the 80s that they were recording off of the radio, or if they had a record player hooked up to their cassette player, they could like select the tracks and put them on a cassette, and then they would give them to a friend.
Yeah.
And everyone was handing around their cassette tapes in the 80s, they're making mixtapes. In a lot of ways, that was no different than stealing music in the digital age, right?
Yeah.
Because you are taking someone else's intellectual property. You want to talk about legality. You want to talk about, IP. Well, intellectual property. This is starting to happen. And then what happens? Well, we get into the digital age and things like Napster comes along, and college dorm rooms are downloading thousands of files all across local area networks. They're just getting dumped onto people's hard drives. We had to figure out how to catch up.
Yeah.
We had to figure out how to adapt to that. And we did adapt to that.
Yeah.
And now all of our music is streamed. And,
And you're getting convenience for it, right? And it's nice, but there is a trade-off. I mean, you're losing the certain serotonin boost that comes from, let's say, like taking that disc, putting it in a CD player, taking that time to hit play, and then you get to listen to it, right? Like there's something that comes along with doing things tactile and like physical.
Agreed. I totally agree. And of course, having the band come to your house will certainly offer you, an auditory experience that maybe playing a recording would not.
Yeah.
But we've expanded the field.
Yeah.
We have made more options available inside the field of music than ever before.
And it hasn't fully gotten rid of like that live experience. It's just made it more bougie.
Saw 3 concerts last year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they're more sought after. It's a more elevated experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right, I think we need to take a break real quick, and you got to hear. It's like, hey, we reined it in.
Yeah, that flew by. I was like, wait, how long has it been? I'm like spiraling here.
Well, when we come back from the break, I want to talk about, some ways in which this can become a tool for your TTRPG space, because I don't want to just make this about the big, giant topic of AI.
Yeah.
But I do want to touch on a couple of psychological things that I think make us fear this. And maybe just plant that in our listeners' heads to walk away with, because, there's a few things here I think we need to talk about. But let's take a break. We'll come right back. All right, we're back from the break. And, like you heard on that break, I just want to reiterate a thing that you heard on the break really quickly. And that is about going and just telling some people about this podcast. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're either thinking about playing D&D, you're involved in an active TTRPG game, you got friends. Tell them about what we're doing. Tell them about this discussion. Go send a link to this discussion to somebody and just say, hey, what do you think of this? And then have them come over to YouTube and put something in the comments. We want you to give us feedback in the comments about the AI discussion.
Because we'll bring it into future videos, talk about it, and you can be a part of this discussion.
Exactly. And I also, Rich, I think, one of the things we discussed on the break was that I think the AI discussion needs to happen like maybe once a month, where we dig in a little more.
Yeah. It's the most happening thing that's happening right now,
Yeah, it definitely takes center spotlight in a lot of discussions. And I want to explore this more, and I want to hear what our listeners have to say, for better or for worse. Do you embrace it? Do you absolutely deny it? And maybe you don't allow it at your table. I don't know.
Yeah. Different. I don't know. I think a lot of people fall in that category, but there's got to be some out there that are like fully embracing it, and I'd love to hear their perspectives too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about, because I'm still curious about the knee-jerk reaction and the fear that surrounds this. And I think I know what that might have something to do with.
I think I know what you think in this moment.
In other discussions and in other videos, I have always kind of talked about the notion that the mind and the brain are two separate things, right? And how the brain is the physical thing and the mind is this immaterial thing that may or may not be the result of all those neurochemical firings in the brain.
Yeah.
And this is a basic philosophical sort of discussion around the notions of dualism versus materialism, right? Material, of course, being that all things are based in some kind of material, concrete element in the universe. And dualism is that very separation of the concrete things versus the immaterial, the idea that we as conscious beings get that from somewhere else, right? Okay. What does this have to do with AI? Because with AI, if AI could travel all the way up the ladder to this notion of super AI, right? I'm trying to remember the term now. It's a limited kind of AI. I'm trying to remember what the current capabilities of AI fall into a category called, it's like dumb AI, or it's like not there yet. In other words, AI requires us to input a prompt, right? And then the next level of AI is when AI is able to go out and learn completely on its own without the prompt.
Yeah.
And then super AI, the third level of AI, is the AI where it has a self-awareness. It knows what it wants.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So this is the one we always talk about. When we're talking about Skynet, we're talking about the big giant that's going to eventually eradicate all of humankind. We're talking about super AI.
Yeah. It has wants and needs that are outside of our programming.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. But I think the problem with that for most people, that initial knee-jerk reaction of fear, comes from this idea that if that could exist, if something could have consciousness, if a being completely made of zeros and ones, which is what that computer is at the end of the day, it's just moving them a lot faster than we are ever used to. But if that being could have, and I'm putting air quotes around the word consciousness, that moves our needle of our belief system way over to the materialism side. It says, wait a minute, am I no more than a very, very complex series of, and a lot of people believe that, and I'm fine with that. A lot of people believe that your entire consciousness is the result of, these neurochemical firings.
Yeah.
Kind of like zeros and ones.
It's an interesting conversation to bring up, because I think there's a huge camp that is outside of this, and they just believe that this kind of stuff is beyond our ability to comprehend, and we should just stay in our lane. But how far have we come, and how complacent are we at the top of the food chain as a species that we can sit around a table and debate why we're here and what's going on upstairs, and we just come such a far way. You know what I mean? And it's
well, I mean, I feel like number one, we are at the top of the food chain, and part of this fear comes from this idea that we might be second on the food chain to a thing that we created, gave power to.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it also diminishes us and this notion that we are more than just the parts that make us up. Right?
Yeah.
The Gestalt theory around, the Gestalt theory around who we are as beings. It's like, I know that the whole of me is more than just the collective sum of all my parts.
Yeah.
Right. But AI would say, or if AI could obtain consciousness, it would say, you just happen to be a processor that moves really fast.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
So let me bring us back to D&D for a second. Because, if I'm sitting here as a dungeon master and we're playing and we're talking, and we're all at the table and we're immersed in a story, and I don't know, we're all just doing a good job of making the game flow. Like the ultimate, let's just talk about the ideal experience, right? We're all in it. We're all in it.
Yeah, in the zone.
We're in the zone. And the six of us are sitting here, six individual buckets of neurochemical shit are sitting at a table, but they're all immersed in a collective immersive experience. Albeit each is their own individual immersion.
Yeah.
There is something that comes out of that, the result of which is a whole contributed to by all those parts.
Yeah.
That's not material to me.
No, it's not.
I mean, maybe it is. I'm not necessarily saying that Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop role-playing games prove the notion of dualism in all philosophy and neuroscience. No.
That'd be a little pretentious. You know?
Well, but that does add an interesting kind of layer to it.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree, because it is proof that you can create something collaboratively that exists on its own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and collaboration is dependent on flexibility. And because if we are all separate sets of neurochemically inspired things that are all functioning, for lack of a better word, predictably, then how do we get to the end of this thing that we couldn't see? You know, like how do we get to a result that we otherwise could not see? We should be able to predict exactly what happens, I would think.
Yeah.
Anyway, off the rails there as I go. What are some ways we can use this in Dungeons & Dragons? How can we use AI effectively in Dungeons & Dragons? What can we do? How can we embrace this? How can we give this meaning?
Well, I think, first off, it's the most helpful for the DM, right? Because there's so much work that falls on the DM's shoulders that they have to do. They have to create maps. If it's a homebrew place, they have to create NPCs. They have to generate loot that's going to be in certain places. All of this stuff can be done in seconds by using AI as a tool without, losing that creativity that comes from being a DM, right?
Well, yeah. And I mean, there's probably a dozen DMs that I could probably list right off the top of my head that are like, yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable making those things up myself. And I frankly would rather have control over those things. But your point goes to an interesting place. But like where else? Like I kind of like it for the imagery.
I do as well. There are some things that are nice drawn out. Like I like when you make your maps the way you do. You know what I mean?
You mean my handmade maps?
Your handmade maps.
I don't do AI for maps.
No. It's tangible. Everything is there for a reason. It's nice. But like there are some things like character portraits or NPCs or kind of like different important places that I like to see, tangibly.
Yeah. I mean, from the art teacher standpoint and from this idea that I want to use it as a tool, I start thinking of it as a sort of a springboard. I'm like, all right, I'm drawing a blank here on something. Let me throw in a prompt and say, give me a baseline response on this. I've got a town with 500 people. The basic commerce of the town is agriculture based, and there is a growing, looming presence, a problem. What are some things that could affect an agriculture based economy in a small town? And then it lists off 10 things, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, I look at all of those, and I'm not going to maybe take them verbatim.
No.
I'm going to pick them up and kind of like play with them a little bit.
It's going to inspire you.
And from the art teacher standpoint, what that is called not working in the void. You have something to give like a feedback response to, which to me is super valuable.
Yeah, nothing, like you always say all the time, nothing's created in a void.
Right.
Right. And you may have in the past gone online and like searched in Google some inspiration and stuff. But all this is kind of doing is bringing that in one place together for you. It's doing the searching for you, saving the time and, inspiring you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you keep saying something that makes me like you're causing my trigger mechanism to fire a little bit.
Oh no!
It's like it'll save you time at the touch of a button.
Yeah. That's kind of what it's doing.
It is. That's what it's doing. No doubt. No doubt. But I keep thinking back to like you go all the way back to like the 1950s when there'd be like a commercial on TV for that new dishwasher, and as a housewife, it's going to save you tons of time.
Yeah.
And it's like we have marched forward with this like sort of carrot on a stick in front of us that's kind of waving in our faces going, hey, this new feature is going to save you time.
Yeah.
But I never feel like I get any extra freaking time.
You know what's crazy? What are we saving time for? What are we saving time for? There's this big looming idea of saving time. What are we going to put it into?
Well, yeah, because all you can really do is spend time. So how
Yeah.
well are you going to spend it?
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe this does make you, this is where that thing comes from before, where it's like, am I going to lose my job to AI? No, but you'll lose your job to the person who's using AI because it's about efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about.
But and that comes from capitalism. That's where that comes from. But that's the only reason efficiency matters like that, right?
Correct. But as a DM, if I want to bring that back to being a DM, if I can make my whole world building, the whole scope of that much more efficiently built. In other words, I have now, instead of having details of my story in one pocket, one town, one potential set of outcomes, now I understand how things work across a continent where I've got massive systems of tension about, where pockets of terrorism might crop up, or where there might be a strike or an economic dispute, or where a series of ships coming into a port, like all of a sudden now I have the opportunity through efficiency to make the story more robust, maybe.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that you can obviously flesh out more things in a faster pace by using AI than you could on your own, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I want to circle back around on, though, on this, in the hopes that, half of the people listening to us haven't turned us off at this point because they're just adamantly opposed to it,
Yeah.
is...
Or they think we're just rambling idiots.
Well, no, but a lot of the conversation here has been about the pro side of AI.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that you said this idea about if you don't use the muscle, you lose the muscle. And I never, ever want to be in that position.
No.
I don't want my creativity to be diminished or dulled because I rely on that too much.
Yeah. And we're talking about like concrete and proven things. That's concrete and proven. If you don't use your imaginative part of your brain, you lose it.
That's right.
That's why, like, when you're an actor, you need to learn how to be as imaginative as you were when you were a kid. Because coming into the world and growing up is just kind of like squishing that down and calming it and doing what you have to do, right? So you lose it a little bit. And you need to learn how to use it again when you come into a field like acting.
It's funny you're mentioning acting right now, and I'm thinking about AI in the realm of filmmaking and how big of a topic that's been. And
yeah,
the thing that kind of bothers me in that realm is completely lost right now because it just went away. My brain just farted.
Well, you've been fried.
No, I think the thing I was going towards here is how I remember what I was going to say. I'm going to start that thought over.
Okay, reboot.
When you're talking about acting and the realm of AI comes into the realm of filmmaking and how that's affected, a lot. There was a big strike. There was a lot going on with that. One of the things that I keep getting reminded of in this is if we're talking about efficiency and how AI is about a kind of efficiency, and these big movie houses want to use AI generated film to save on maybe not paying actors, then I ask myself, ultimately at the end of the day, will the stuff that costs more to produce because it uses real acting or it uses real illustrators or it uses real art in general be ultimately more expensive? And there'll be a division that takes place there. It's like, this was AI generated and you only have to pay a small amount, whereas this was hand generated or genuinely generated. Does that form of art only become for the rich?
I think so. I think like I said, it becomes more elevated. It becomes a more illustrious experience.
Well, this happened with printmaking, right?
Yeah.
When the printing press was made, books became more democratized. They become more available. Okay, fine. That's a good thing. Printmaking in art is a way to take a painting, a single thing that would cost a lot of money because there's only one of it, and to make it into an edition where now there's 100 of them and they're signed and numbered. But what does that mean? Well, now they cost far less.
And everybody can access them.
Correct. It's a democratization. But what you do wind up with in the end is you do notice that the people who collect prints are of a different income set than the people that collect paintings.
This is true. Then do movies with real actors just become for the rich?
That's
You know
what I'm
I mean?
asking. That's what I'm asking.
I mean, the AI generative movies will be of lesser quality, of course.
So does this mean the games that are played by DMs that purely don't touch AI in any level are somehow better? And this is it. Is I think making this a hierarchy, this is better than this, is problematic because I'm not sure if we are properly employing this as a tool and we are giving a meaningful existence. First of all, there is this saying called amor fati, which is the love of fate. In other words, you embrace that which you know is inevitable, right? And so if we have to look, AI is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like it's not like if we fight hard enough against it, it's going to disappear. Like all these arguments out there, I get them, and I empathize with the people that are upset about this because I feel that way too. But it's sort of like, can we as a community of Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop RPG people, as a community, number one, embrace the inevitable because it's here, it's not going away.
Yeah.
And as a community, can we shape the use of this in a meaningful way? We have an opportunity to do that. If all we do is shun every single content creator that happens to use some AI and we kick them to the curb, we are only prolonging our agony. So how do we as a community shape this? That's my question. And I think that's a good question for our listener base.
Yeah. I think it's a good question to leave off on too.
I agree.
Like we're not going to answer that right now.
No,
way.
that's mostly for, consideration.
Yeah. Ponder on it.
And if you guys are thinking about that right now, hopefully on the heels of this whole conversation that we just had, go over to YouTube where Wither and Bloom Studios, you can comment on this podcast, which we will post there, and let us know, how do we shape this in a meaningful way?
Yeah.
We are a community. We are both threatened by and intrigued by the use of this on some level.
Yeah.
What do we do here? Because it's never going away.
Yeah. And we're going to find out as it goes on whether, like it does fall in that category of, all right, these games are lesser, these games are more illustrious, right? Like, because even if you're talking about, like, if you go on Fiverr as a DM, right? Someone's going to say, I offer my services, I use AI though.
Can I go on Fiverr as a DM?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I didn't know.
I don't know, maybe. Or like find a DM, that website, or I don't know, one of them. But like the person that doesn't use AI is probably going to charge more.
Well, yeah. Or if you use ChatGPT as your DM, because you can kind of play with that as a DM, or you use a living person as a DM. But again, I think that's the question. Yeah, you kind of can.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you just have to put the prompt in. It's like, I want you to function like a dungeon master in a game of D&D 5e. I will be a player. I am playing a halfling bard.
Yeah.
And then you go from there.
That's so cool.
And it's sort of like, so set a scenario for me in a medieval world, and you can give it all the prompt instructions.
Yeah.
And then boom, it's going to start and you can respond to that. And
That's
I think
crazy.
I just created a whole other can of worms that I just opened.
Wait, we should do a video where we like try that out.
Why don't we?
That'd be sick.
All right.
AI D&D. Yeah.
People are going to hate that.
They're going to hate that so much.
Well, let's try it. See what happens.
Someone's got to do it.
You guys, listen, we love you for listening to us. We love that you're hanging on. Please tell a friend about this. And, go over to Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube, like and follow, subscribe over there, and stay tuned for the next podcast. We will catch you next week. Rich, thanks for this. This was really good.
Thank you, Todd. This was very enlightening.
All right. Awesome. We'll see you next week.
Adios.
Take care.